The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here he is, Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show. Today we'll be discussing the best 1980s set period films and television shows. Joining me for the discussion, returning champion from this Saturday Evening Post and author of Marvel Comics for Dummies, Troy Brownfield.
Greetings.
All right. Well, Stranger Things Season 5 has kicked off. It will be finishing through the Christmas and New Year's season, holiday season, over the weekend on Netflix. I haven't seen it yet because we're recording it beforehand. But I want to talk to Troy.
They killed Dustin and Steve in the first episode.
Yeah, like what the heck? And then they came back as like American Werewolf and London Ghosts. That was odd. So I want to take a look back, and this is something I brought up with Troy. Look at the other films and TV shows that use the 1980s as their backdrop. Stranger Things wasn't the first, but it surely was a catapult in the 2010s for telling stories in the 1980s. A major, like everything. It felt like Netflix would you'd hear a project from it, and they'd be like, "Well, I'm not sure if we could." It's set in the 80s. Green light. Like it felt like that for a while, and just what does it right? We're gonna come up with a top 10 list, but the episode is gonna be us coming up with it together, discussing things. And one of it comes from Stranger Things, nonetheless. I think Troy and I have long discussed historical accuracies with the 1980s used in Stranger Things, where which I enjoy Stranger Things. I do question some of I do feel like a lot of the times with Stranger Things, it's someone who heard about the 1980s making Stranger Things and not someone who lived in the 1980s.
I started laughing because you and I we each have our own one major nitpick with the first season, and I know what yours is, and I always laugh about it. And I think you know what mine is, but
yes,
you want to light up your major number one nitpick.
My number one nitpick is that in the not the Wheeler house, but
it's in the basement at the Wheeler house because
Wheeler
they're
house.
playing D&D.
Right, they have a poster for John Carpenter's The Thing. That movie bombed horribly. E.T. would have been what they were after in that time. Nobody would that poster. Where would he get it? Where would he buy it? Marketing that's not something you went to Target and it was on the poster spindle rack. And I know what yours is.
When they have the conversation about the Smiths, about an album that has not come out in the United States at that point. And I always joked that he is he's the most plugged in Indiana teenager in terms of music to have a copy of that Smiths Unreleased in America album.
And season 3 brought a new one for me. When they get the mall, that takes place, that's the backbone of season 3. Starcourt Mall is playing George A. Romero's Day of the Dead, which was a very limited release in the United States that touted Hawkins, Indiana. If it was Indianapolis, Indiana, I'm sure it played around somewhere, even Fort Wayne, but Hawkins, Indiana was playing Day of the Dead. And I'm like, and not too long after, Back to the Future. So and I know they're just a lot of people are like, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's fine. But I'm like, yeah, but they're selling you a nostalgia on accuracy and stuff. And it gets in my brain where I'm like, how would Day of the Dead have played there? I don't know.
Well, I think that, six of one, half dozen the other.
Mm-hmm.
Every decade, any show being set in a previous decade is going to have that problems with the people of that decade. The people that don't care are not the people who lived during it.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to have like the internet's vision of the 80s, which is
Yes.
I've always loved that meme where it's like the one side is like this is what people think the 80s was, and it was all neon and everything, and the other side is all wood paneling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what it was. Because you know that the wood paneled station wagons and the wood paneling in the houses and a lot of brown and in decoration, couches and shit. I mean, that was very 80s. That neon vision was a maybe LA, New York kind of version of it, definitely an MTV version of it, but it
Yes.
was not Iowa's 1980s.
No, and most of the 80s there, like at least through 85, 86, is a hangover of the 70s.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. And well, like Let's Groove by Earth, Wind and Fire. People think
Mm-hmm.
that's a 70s song. It's not. It's an 80s
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
And like, it's 82, I think. You're like 80, 81, 82, like 3 years into the 80s. There's still very disco sounding songs. Give It Up by Casey and the Sunshine Band as well is an 80s hit.
Right, right, yeah. And there's a lot, I mean, there's a lot of things too that start in like late 80s, like 88, 89, but are really known for their 90s push with things. Like a lot of so in the 1980s when it came to like television, the Fox network started, but it really didn't become what it is and hit its stride until the 90s. Like Married with Children started then, but Married with Children wasn't like popular till probably the Jefferson era of the 90s. And they had like I think their big show then was what I mean there's like America's Most Wanted, but they had like 21 Jump Street was their biggest contribution to television at the time.
Yeah, 21 Jump Street. There's kind of an arc of Married with Children blows up because of the Terry Racolta protest over the lingerie shop episode.
Okay.
Because that's a couple years in, and Al goes to the lingerie shop, and this Midwestern mom saw it, took it to talk shows, and people are like, "Oh, I want to see this terrible, revolting show. Oh, it's funny. I'll stay." And and then again at the latter half, it's 90210, it's the X-Files. When you're starting to slide from the 80s into the 90s, that bridge of those shows that
The
start popping
Simpsons
up.
starts in 89 being a
89.
regular thing, but
Yeah.
it's the 90s when they get Martin and Living Color, the X yeah, like you said, the X-Files, like all that really fills out what you know about Fox.
Yeah, it went
Which
along.
yeah.
It had some interesting shows early on, like Werewolf, which deserved more.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Uh and then they pick up there's syndicated shows and stuff that pick up as well. But so like when we come to this list of the 80s stuff, we're what we're looking at is which of these shows were right about the period or the most accurate portrayal type thing, and like not the Rome happened in a day type thing.
yeah, and I
And
also, oh,
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to like.
well, I was gonna say like I love the movie, but it is very much, as you have pointed out before on this show, the Wedding Singer is very much the Rome in a day. Like
Yeah,
you're also like Hot Tub Time Machine, very much Rome in a day type thing. Or just trying to like throw all the fads as if they happened in the same time and were going on at the same time.
yeah. I actually, and I think I may have interpreted the thrust a little bit differently because I made also a small list of the 80s, the actual 80s shows that are most emblematic of the decade.
Right. So
And
yes, before because we had discussed this, you had brought it up. Before we go into these shows, you and I are going to go through. I think we should go through television, movies, and music that were what people were actually into
yeah,
or going for or popular. So like I'm, bring like TV, like movies. Where do you want to start? TVs, movies, or music?
that's up to you, man.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna start. Let's start with let's go with movies, always movies. And I'm going, like, I made a list of movies that finished in the top 10 box office in the United States. This is going to be a very United States experience, I feel, because we didn't grow up anywhere else, and a lot of these
Yeah.
80s shows take place in the United States. But the top movies that finished in the top 10 box office for the year in the United States that aren't the ones like you're like, oh yeah, of course, the ones everybody knows. And the funny thing was, there's only one year in the 1980s that looks like the top 10 at the end of the year looks like what everybody thinks of the 80s, and that is it is The Outlier. And there's only one movie that doesn't in it, and that year is 1984. Which everybody already knows, if you're a movie person, that is a nominal summer. But the top 10 of 1984, and this is the exception to the rule here, but the top 10 was Beverly Hills Cop, which made an insane amount of money and played for like a year and a half. Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins, The Karate Kid, Police Academy, Footloose, Romancing the Stone, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, and the one I don't think anybody is gonna brings up, but it was in the top 10, Splash, which that's Tom Hanks.
Hell of a
But
list.
but no one's bringing up, oh man, well, the Splash, which that one could be. I mean, it recently came up because Disney added hair to the butt of um what's her name?
Daryl Hannah.
Daryl Hannah on their streaming service. But those, I mean, those are the movies that, I mean, no one talks about Police Academy anymore, but that's the most geek friendly, internet friendly top 10. Before, I'm not going to go through, I can go through this list, but let's just talk so you can bring up movies and I don't just claim them right here with a list. But
No, I think that if we're talking about 80s movies that are actually emblematic of the 80s,
mhm.
real quick on that list, one of the great things about Beverly Hills Cop is the culture clash of it, sort of what I mentioned, that your Midwestern experience is different than your LA experience. You've
Right.
got Detroit cop spending a few days in California. He's reacting to a lot of California stuff,
Yes.
like the fact that this police station looks nice and
Right.
and things like that. So you are getting a little bit of that, it's fish out of water, but it's like a couple versions of the 80s. Ghostbusters, I've been told, is incredibly accurate to 80s New York, especially the scene when the diners in the deli on the green ignore Rick Moranis being attacked.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just like, oh, there's crazy shit, never mind. And the vibe of that, like New Yorkers love Ghostbusters.
Hmm.
Like people from that period of time, like they're fiercely protective of Ghostbusters the way they're fiercely protective of Spider-Man as a character.
Right, right.
Like,
Well, with Ghostbusters, the way it works, also not being in New York, there was a very popular trend in comedies was the slobs versus snobs,
yeah,
and people could relate to that. They could put themselves in the shoes of the Ghostbusters with how they were going.
yeah. But as far as an alternative set of movies that exist in the 80s while nailing the 80s, look no further than John Hughes,
Oh
with
yeah, yeah.
Ferris Bueller being the more fanciful, but 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, and then Ferris being the more fantasy fueled of them, but still accurate on a few levels. They are hitting the buttons of fairly accurate fashion, definitely accurate music. Um, you know, the Shermer, Illinois is fictional, but they get,
Hmm.
they did have dances. There were crazy ass parties after the dances. There were,
Yeah.
shitty detention and abusive teachers. This stuff is pretty accurate. A record store was a real job. Um, you could narrow it down and you could tell in Pretty in Pink in particular, Ducky is an MTV fashion victim. But if you look at
Yeah.
like 16 Candles, you know, um, Farmer Ted, he's dressed the way that a kid like Farmer Ted would be dressed like in
Right.
1984 with the button-up shirt with the rolled up sleeves untucked with he looks just like a regular dude. He wasn't overly styled. The jock characters were not overly styled. A couple of the girls were like you could tell they were like the rich girls, the popular girls that were wearing these more of the moment kind of clothes, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Andy did not. I mean, this is very 80s. This is, you know, people borrow their parents' station wagons and shit.
Yeah.
And, Hughes was a big music guy, so Spandau Ballet and a lot of these acts are playing their acts that are putting music out at the time.
And characters are dressing like pop stars or what people would look like.
Yeah, and
Pop stars.
even the archetypes, you go to Breakfast Club, they are dressed pretty accurately to what those social statuses would be. Again, Brian, again, Anthony Michael Hall in the Breakfast Club, he's wearing the just like the sweatshirt, and
Yeah.
Emilio's wearing
School
his school,
sweats. Yeah.
yeah, his school gear, and Judd Nelson with the leather jacket. I mean, that's era appropriate. Ali Sheedy,
Yeah.
proto goth girl,
Yeah, trench coats were big in the 80s and the 90s in different ways. Like that
Yeah,
that was a I'm an outsider type thing that yeah, I'm an outsider by following fashion trends of an outsider. Like
yeah, right.
that's
Like
it. And
Claire.
the gloves with the cut the tips off. Oh, there's the camera doing the thing. Okay.
But yeah, those movies really exist within a pocket of this is a lot what it's like. And I actually put up an 80s film bedroom as my backdrop. This is Poltergeist.
Yep.
But if you look, this is, Poltergeist, 81, 82.
1982 Poltergeist, not to be
Yeah,
confused with 2015's Poltergeist. Just
right. I mean, like shot in 81, put out in 82, but you look, Star Wars poster, Darth Vader Star Wars carrying case for
mm-hmm.
figures, Tauntaun, Magic on the Lakers,
Yep.
and then over here, if you look, there's a couple other things. Soccer growing to prominence,
There's
a
a LA
Toys R
Rams
Us.
LA Rams helmet.
Yep, Toys R Us comforter. Like this is very accurate to 81, 82 that this is happening in. And it's just they're
The
not throwing it
ET
at you.
bedroom too. Yeah.
They're not throwing it at like in your face. They're just like this is what the room would look like. And in the whirlwind sequence when they open the door and the whole room's going crazy, there's like a Mego Hulk figure that you see prominently. That's
Hmm.
like a 79 action figure, so you could see the kid would probably still have it. I mean, this is
Yeah.
stuff that's happening. Um, and then again, fashion wise, it looks pretty on point.
Yep.
Again, the cars and stuff, this is, and the idea of like those housing developments growing unchecked, um, was a very 80s thing. You know, the,
Um. Yeah. No. And the ET bedroom is similar.
yeah,
For Elliot.
the Dungeons and Dragons game is
Hmm.
period accurate too, because it's starting to blow up at that time. And I mean, it'd been around for several years, but it's really starting to kind of blow up. And they've got some of the actual miniatures that they're playing with, and you know,
Yeah. The thing they always forget in these things is like stuff that you would have got from like a book fair poster. Like they always forget those. They forget that kids like sports too.
yeah,
Like they always want to negate the sports. Like kids had Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird. There's baseball players, football. Like people like Wayne Gretzky.
yeah,
They like that stuff, and they try to negate that. I mean, because a lot of people who end up making films are like, oh, I got picked on by jocks and stuff, and I hate sports. It's like, yeah, but you can't ignore that majority of the population, the kid likes sports.
yeah. And this Magic Johnson poster, if I'm not mistaken, this was of a series and type that you got at shoe and sporting goods stores.
Okay.
So, and I remember one in particular, Sixers one with Moses Malone, where he's holding like the Ten Commandments, and it just says
Yeah.
Moses, and that was hilarious. They had some funny ones like that. There's one of like Magic Johnson as a magician, and stuff like that. That
Well,
they,
and to point out the Star Wars one, that's not from a neatly rolled up poster. That's like a folded up. It looks like something like all these things you see now. Like they're finely put. Dude, we would have put thumbtacks in our posters back then.
oh hell
Like we
yeah,
weren't like I'm collecting this. Like this is gonna go in the trash when I get the new cool thing that I need to replace it. That's what happened. Like
yeah,
it was
yeah. I
not like
have
that.
a bunch of posters from my late teens and college years still in a bin, and
Hmm.
Kyle has appropriated several of them. but you totally find the push pin holes in the corners.
Exactly. And then you talk about John Hughes teen movies. There's other teen movies going on at the time too, other comedy, but Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street, which those are kind of obvious ones, but I don't think people realize how on top of the world Freddy Krueger was in the
Yeah.
1980s. From 80, he comes into 84 to the rest of the decade. Like this guy got overblown so much that I think he doesn't have that lasting legacy aside from, being the new Dracula of like Halloween merchandise where you just do whatever with Freddy. But like this guy got to a point in the 80s where he had a movie come out and 2 months later a season of a show started. That was him. And he was on MTV all the time. He did commercials. He had a hotline, a phone number you called to talk to Freddie, and he had an album out as well as soundtracks for like I think one of the biggest pop culture statements of the 1980s is the Dream Master, where it went full encompassing. Rennie Harlan is there. He directs it. It's a very stylish but kind of hollow movie because Harlan's like, let's make Freddy the star. And then they made this like killer soundtrack with known are like Sinead O'Connor's on it. Tuesday Night stars in the film and does the songs on the soundtrack. And they're just trying to sell popcorn and everything. Like that to me is like the Batman Forever of the of the 80s, where it's just like this all encompassing. Like I want to do an episode sometime about like what movies are the most full quadrant blockbusters ever released, where they're going for soundtrack, merch, like popcorn movie, like which ones like each decade all encompass that. But that's another episode. But yeah, I think those are also they're always thrown in horror, but I also like those are like the teen movies coming out too. Like
Yeah.
I always tell people I didn't come up big on John Hughes. I came up through like Elm Street and Nightmare on Elm and Friday the 13th. Those are my teen characters in my teen movies that I would like quote and stuff, more so than the John Hughes ones.
Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned that too, because also Dream Warriors, if you look hard at Dream Warriors, is the one that really establishes Freddy's personality that he maintains through the rest of the film, where he's got a quip for each kill.
It balances it best though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also the kids again are representative of different social and ethnic groups.
Yeah.
Because it's the first. I mean, there's a guy in two, but it's the first Elm Street movie with a fully realized black character.
Yep.
You've got again like your metal chick,
D&D guy.
yeah, the geeky guy, yeah, exactly, and the powers become emblematic of those characters, which is interesting. But again, they're on point for kids of that time. They're representative of groups that would feel fairly accurate. And you mentioned the balance, like a Freddy being equipped, but Nancy coming back.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, we weren't used to like Final Girls returning,
Yeah.
and so it balances like, well, how do we balance out against Freddy with just another batch of kids waiting to be killed? Oh, we bring Nancy back, and it like everything about that movie is elevated in terms of
I
like
love that movie. I get it.
mythology of it. His fucking insane origin story,
Yeah.
recounted by the nun, the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs.
It's got a Ray Harryhausen skeleton fight in a junkyard. It's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, that movie, every time I think of it, I'm like, I need to watch it right now. I want to watch it right now. Like, it just came out 4K recently, so I got to watch it again. I'm like, that movie just kicks. Like, it's one of the...
Oh, yeah, in the music, Dokken, Dream Warriors. I
Yeah.
mean, of the moment.
So, like, everywhere I always leave, that's one of my favorite posters of all time is the Dream Warriors poster.
Yeah.
So...
Kyle has Kyle has a
that-
t-shirt of the poster.
Yeah, it's so good. So Troy, I'm gonna go through this list here of this is what people, maybe the adults, this is what the adults were into in the 80s or whatever, or something. The people with the money. This is what people went to see. These are like movies that made the top 10 of the year from 80 to 89. That I don't think people are like just like recount or romanticize the 80s about. Some, yeah, sure, okay, but you got 9 to 5, Stir Crazy, Any Which Way You Can, Private Benjamin, Coal Miner's Daughter, Smokey and the Bandit 2. We cannot stress how big Burt Reynolds was at this time. This, granted, about midway through the 80s, his box office bankability starts to drop off, but he's still a draw. The Blue Lagoon was a giant movie. Nobody's touching that stuff, are they? On Golden Pond.
Might be in the files.
Yes. Arthur, that movie was big. Stripes, Cannonball Run. There's Burt Reynolds again. Chariots of Fire, The Four Seasons, Time Bandits. So, yeah, that's a big one. Tootsie, Officer and a Gentleman, Porky's, 48 Hours, which is the kickoff for Eddie Murphy to then dominate with Beverly Hills Cop. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Look, it's Burt Reynolds again.
And Dolly for the second.
And Dolly. Dolly was huge, yeah. So that's why that movie is like, oh, wow, the two biggest stars. Terms of Endearment, Trading Places, more Eddie Murphy. Sudden Impact, got Dirty Harry there. Mr. Mom. Nobody talks about Mr. Mom.
John Hughes and Michael Keaton.
Right. Color Purple, Cocoon. Cocoon was huge. And one of my favorite moments in Say Anything was Lloyd's movie night at the old people's home. This is Lloyd. This is my it's Cocoon. So I guess we're gonna watch Cocoon. Jewel of the Nile, Out of Africa, Witness. Witness is one of the best movies of the 80s. If you are a Harrison Ford fan, or say you are, and you've never seen Witness, go see it. Spies Like Us, Crocodile Dundee, which was gigantic, which is why we still hear about dumb Crocodile Dundee bullshit. The second one, too. Second one also places top 10. Platoon, Back to School. Do kids know who Rodney Dangerfield is anymore?
I don't know. They might know Rodney in the context of other people doing Rodney.
I'm surprised no one ever puts a Dangerfield-like character in something from the 80s when they do 80s stuff.
Real quick note. Also super 80s because it's got young Robert Downey Jr. and the Zabka.
Yeah.
And a cover of Twisted Shout within about 2 months of the Ferris Bueller's Day Off use of Twisted Shout.
Right. Golden Child, more Eddie Murphy, Ruthless People. You remember what Leonard Nimoy's biggest success of the 1980s was?
3 Men and a Baby.
When he had the #1 movie, 3 Men and a Little Baby. Fatal Attraction, Good Morning Vietnam, Moonstruck, Untouchables, Secret of My Success, Stakeout, Lethal Weapon, Witches of Eastwick, Rain Man, Coming to America.
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy just dominates. Crockett, yeah, there's Twins. Twins, that's the first time I've mentioned Arnold. Fish Called Wanda, Cocktail, Big, Look Who's Talking, Dead Poet Society, Lethal Weapon 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Born on the 4th of July. Look, Oliver Stone got 2 movies in there. But that's what people were going to see. Some of those go up for Academy Awards. But, like, it's not...
Did you say Batman? If you did, I didn't.
No, I took it out because that's what people think of.
Oh, okay.
I took out the ones people. These are the ones that finish top 10, but aren't your Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Star Treks. Yeah, Star Trek was a huge series in the 80s.
I think the thing with Arnold that people miss was he was a massive star, but his movies were always kind of moderate performers until later because they were huge on video.
Yeah, Rambos and Rockies all finished in the tops in there, but I took them out because everybody thinks of the 80s with Rambos and Rockies. I'm sure a couple Arnolds were in there that I took out, but like Terminator, like no, I don't think Terminator made top 10, but sure. But yeah, so those are like the movies that people went for. Television, we'll move to that.
Yeah, I think, and feel free to laugh because it is both sides, but I think that a show that is insanely emblematic of the 80s for what it did in terms of music and tone and creating fashion and everything is Miami Vice.
Yep.
And it is so influential. And the pilot is still an incredible piece of work.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of TV shows licensing of the moment music and shooting it cinematically and trying to articulate a location and a time period, it was light years beyond what other shows were doing.
Yeah.
And that I've seen it pop up on the internet lately because of the ongoing fixation the internet has in the air tonight. People realizing that the reason that song got a second life was the Crockett and Tubbs going to try to kill Calderon sequence from the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the car, and In the Air Tonight starts, and it's like just the shot of the wheel and Tubbs slowly loading the shotgun and Crockett stopping at the phone booth to call his ex-wife, to make sure that they were actually in love at one point, because he's
Right.
convinced he's going to die on the tarmac. And they get there, and Calderon gets away after they kill all of his henchmen, and it's like, what the fuck just happened? Because that didn't happen on TV at the time.
Right.
And I remember like that pilot ending, and I'm like, when is episode two? Like, because it was just holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
show was
it's
yeah.
so defining of
Yeah. It embraces a lot of like style and stuff came from the types of music and stuff like it you know, people, I mean, people are here, they, when we hear In the Air Tonight, we think of them driving on the road. Um, but yeah, that show was definitely the moment, and lasted beyond, like, when people remember Miami Vice and stuff, but like something like that I think was big in the moment too, but like doesn't have that staying power, is like something like L.A. Law.
yeah. LA Law, Bochco does like really great 80s work because he's got Hill Street Blues, which starts pretty early in the
Yep.
80s, so it feels a little bit more
That
like a
was a defining cop show. Like that so like there are the increases in intensity in what you can do on television as pushed by the cop show. And before NYPD Blue, you had Hill Street Blues pushing the limits.
which was
Or so
Bochco again.
yeah, yeah.
And the thing with Hill Street Blues, again, talk about pilots that make an impression. At the end of the pilot episode, Hill and Rinko, who you've been following the entire episode, are trying to make a bust
Mm-hmm.
and get gunned down, and you think they've died at the end of the first episode. And episode two is like 6 months later or whatever, where Hill and Rinko are finally coming back to duty after nearly being killed at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the pilot. And it's dealing immediately with like, these cops are traumatized. They nearly died. And you're like, because when they get shot, again, you're like, holy shit. Like
Right.
these shows are just smashing rules at the time, which is
Gotcha.
crazy.
Yeah. And there's like, yeah, hospital shows getting elevated with like Saint Elsewhere. That's where Denzel Washington, big
Yeah.
start for him. Howie Mandel was a name at the time, but this was getting him involved in scripted things.
Mark
Uh,
Harmon.
Mark Harmon, yeah. One of my favorites all time, Moonlighting, which
Oh, yeah.
was popular, so popular, and had a massive distribution. And like Sybil Shepherd got pregnant, which delayed. We got Die Hard partially because Sybil Shepherd had to take a break from Moonlighting because she was pregnant,
Yeah.
and Bruce became available. Um, but like, yeah, there's all these like drama. Like Dallas was huge, and then we got the knockoffs. Like it was the primetime soap opera. Dallas. We had Dynasty, Knots Land, like that stuff. People were eating up these like wealthy asshole, and that's why I think, and there's still an appetite for it because it got like Yellowstone stuff that people, and Landman kind of feels that way too.
We should do an episode at some point on Yellowstone because I've watched the entire show, and it is one of the most interestingly constructed shows I've ever seen because each character is a genre
Yeah.
of the Dutton family. Like you've got like a comedic character, an action hero, and stuff. Like everybody, it's like a D&D party almost.
I've watched the Harrison Ford one. That's the one I've seen,
Okay.
but I've never watched any of the other Yellowstones.
Yeah, there's so many distinct like storylines that are like of their own genre, and somehow it all works together.
Yeah.
But I also, when I think of the 80s too, I think the sitcoms were really big, but the ones that were the most like, I made a note of the ones that felt like living in the 80s, I thought were Family Ties,
Yep.
A Different World, and Head of the Class,
Yeah,
with
I loved Heather Class. Yeah.
maybe WKRP, because I worked at a radio
Hmm.
station and I feel like WKRP is very representative of how radio stations are in terms of some of those personality types.
Yep.
But
I had Perfect
Family Ties,
Strangers down here too, because that aired with Head of the Class.
what was?
And Perfect Strangers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Family Ties is really particularly of the era because it's a culture class within a family of two former hippies and a Republican kid, like a
Yeah.
Reaganite Republican kid, and that would only happen there. That's very specific. And the house, again, very woody. Very,
Family Ties is the better version of Growing Pains, which was also airing at that same time.
yeah. And Alex, I don't know if Alex was the first character to regularly have a personal computer on their desk, but he was very close if he wasn't the first, because that's something that's happening at the time is the advent of the personal computer in every home. And Alex is shown doing homework on it. And this would pop up in
Hmm.
head of the class. They had computers in the classroom. They had two computers. Um,
Yeah.
Dan Snyder sat next to one, obviously before he was looking up internet porn or whatever. Um,
Well, and you know what's funny is, one of our most popular television actors and stuff today is Jason Bateman. Where'd he come from? Oh, well, let me tell you. The Hogan family. It was also what Valerie was it was
yeah.
multiple names, but that was a pretty decently liked
Well,
show that no one talks about.
let's run it back. He was Ricky Schroeder's best friend on
Oh,
Silver
yes,
Spoons.
Silver Spoons, yeah.
Before that, he was one of the adopted kids on Little House on the Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to that Silver Spoons. They give him his own show, which the late lamented It's Your Move, which
Yep.
has the fucking great Dregs of Humanity two-parter, which I think we've talked about before.
Yep.
Kids, the internet, YouTube, It's Your Move, Jason Bateman, Dregs of Humanity part 1 and 2. Thank me for it. It is hilarious. But yeah, so he's on an upward arc of doing all of
Yeah.
these things. He's continuing to get like all this work as he moves along. And
Yeah. He's right. We also, I mean, there are also younger skewing sitcom stuff like Punky Brewster and Alf. And Punky was really the character of Punky was very stylish, 80s,
yeah.
lots of color and stuff. With the guy that's Punky.
Yeah.
Remember his voice?
That's right.
Also, Empty Nest. That show ran forever. And
Yeah.
it gets its go in the 80s, like just a lot of stuff that I know people know, but people know Magnum PI, but where did they also remember Simon and Simon and like Hunter as
Yeah.
well? Like,
I loved Simon and Simon personally, but
yep, I watched that one.
you mentioned Empty Nest, which was a spinoff of the Golden Girls, but
Hmm.
I got to throw Golden Girls in there for just a minute because
Yep.
it's also a very 80s vision of what old people were like. Because I
Hmm.
looked up what the ages of the girls were supposed to be in the
They're
first
very young.
55. Rose and Blanche are 55, and Dorothy's 57 in the first season. I'm 52. I don't think I look like Blanche and Rose and Dorothy.
Yeah, yeah, and it's still very, very old, and like, yeah, it's nutty when you look at that and what the idea of it was. And they wanted to continue. I mean, that show was so popular they went with Golden Palace
Yeah.
like after to keep it going. You also had like speed of like old people, Mama's Family. That was quite popular. No one talks about now. Like Matlock was all over the 80s too.
Yeah.
And
Which
yeah,
has a new version, which is
yeah, new version. Yeah, just designing women, Murphy Brown. These are things I just don't see get lumped with age. And one I would China Beach. Do you
oh,
remember
okay. We'll go
that?
back to China Beach in a second. But Designing Women in Dynasty were all
Yep.
about the shoulder pads,
Yep, that's where
which were a
those come. Yep.
massive 80s women's fashion statement because it was supposed to
Hmm.
be business elevation and stuff. It
Yep.
was like, but if you watch Dynasty and Designing Women, you see that shoulder pad fashion aesthetic. But China
Yeah.
Beach is one of those shows that's like um set in the past. So you're seeing that decade's version of the perception of the past, sort of like we're seeing what the 2000s version of the 80s is from Stranger Things,
Right.
like the 80s version of the 60s because it's Vietnam.
Yeah.
But you know, it was the music and stuff was very on point in that show. They used a lot of popular music of the 60s and they were pretty careful about when it
Hmm.
fell because like we said, one of my big gripes about the 80s is like assuming that the music for 80 to 89 is one giant glob when there were very distinct movements and like
Right.
stuff came out. And I'm always annoyed when they use like an 87 song in like 81 or
Right.
whatever
Yep. Same.
because it just wasn't right. Which makes for, sometimes hilarity in watching.
Right.
Um, because it's so easy to make the actual choice, you know?
Uh, yeah. Oh, there's a giant show that I never see brought up. I didn't even watch back then, but I know my history of knowledge of television ratings and everything else. That I've always seen. Too Close for Comfort. This was a juggernaut.
Yeah. It was one of the ones too that was on network and then transitioned to a longer syndicated life.
Yeah.
Like It's a Living did the same thing. Um, but and retained both shows retained most of the cast,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting when they made that move because it shows that syndication was big enough to support paychecks.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, the kids, if you don't know what syndication is, you could go to the Saturday Evening Post. I wrote a big article about syndication once and like what
Right.
syndication
Which
looked
is
like.
where Star Trek: The Next Generation would drop in this decade.
Yeah, yeah.
Um.
It was Next Gen and Deep Space Nine were syndicated, and it wasn't until Voyager that they
On
had
UPN. Yeah.
in UPN, yeah, which would later merge with the WB to form CW.
Hmm.
And it's the syndication was huge. It was a lot of shows got a second life, or shows were supported by that syndicated
Hmm.
money. Like the magic number used to be 100 episodes. So if shows ran 5 seasons, and sometimes if you had a
Yep.
struggling show, they would drag to 5 seasons because they knew that they could cash in and get that
Yep.
sweet, sweet syndication
The syndication package. Yep.
money. And why 100 episodes was significant was because they would run them daily. So you could have Monday through Friday, 5 episodes, and that would last you months to run through the whole series. And then they could just start it over again.
Yeah.
And
You would play through most of the year without a rerun.
yep.
Or you could double up. But yeah, that was the ploy. We also had action shows, which I had mentioned some more adult ones, but you had like the more B level one. You had like the A Team, Fall Guy, Knight Rider, and MacGyver. Those were all, and you get Quantum Leap at the end of the decade, but I really that's more 90s than it is
Yeah.
80s, but it does start there.
A-Team is particularly 80s in its premise because the main four were Vietnam veterans who had been falsely accused of a war
Right.
crime in Vietnam. And the fact they're being pursued by the government is based entirely on that premise.
Hmm.
So, there's other times it could work with different, conflicts, but Vietnam precisely, and also Magnum PI, which I loved, but Magnum was very particular about Magnum and his friends having been Vietnam veterans and
Yeah.
later established their relationship with Higgins through that as well. And Mac was a character that was Magnum's friend in naval intelligence that figured into multiple episodes and storylines. And so sometimes there were Russian villains, guys that knew them that they'd encountered in Vietnam that appeared later
Right.
in the show. And so it was interesting that, like, again, this is very specific to the 80s because the country, without going too dark, we had a really big Vietnam hangover. And
Yeah.
it really influenced a lot of media, like First Blood, Rambo, etc. Missing in Action. All these things were very, very influenced by Vietnam and its effect on the American psyche, and particularly a lot of these action shows.
Yeah. Um. There are some other shows that are just kind of randomly left here, but they were significant that we hadn't talked about yet. Cosby Show, obviously huge. We can move on from that.
No, let's talk about Cosby.
Yeah. Facts of Life. George Clooney gets some early appearances here.
Facts of Life is interesting because they tried to push the boundaries on a lot of storytelling issues and kind of got pushback from the network, but still managed to get a few through. There's a suicide story
Hmm.
that they talk about, very straightforward. There was Blair being embarrassed of her disabled cousin, who was a stand-up comedian that
Yeah.
they worked in. But also the first frank discussion about using a condom, even though it was referred to as a thingamabob in the episode, came on
Yeah.
Facts of Life.
Oh, very nice. Oh, also have okay. So these have nothing to do with Murder She Wrote. Obviously huge. Pee-wee's Playhouse was a giant moment in children's television. The Wonder Years starts at the end of the 80s and is the first real sense of the 80s itself really having a nostalgia for anything, because the 80s seem to want to promote the 80s. And it might be our last decade where we were all about promoting, like, and in the 80s they talk about it's the 80s and they would go into there's, oh well, it's the 90s now, but like the 90s seem to start to have a nostalgia for like the hippie culture, the 70s and the late 60s, early 70s, started
Yeah.
influencing stuff as as a rebellion to the decade that just came.
I, I
Let's
wrote
go back one. Yeah.
I wrote an article about this on Newsarama a long time ago, and it was one of the we had a syndication deal. It was one of the ones that the Today Show website ran. I don't know if you can still find it,
Hmm.
but I talked about the pop cycle, about how we frequently reference one decade will frequently reference 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because and so like the 90s had the 80s had the 60s, the 90s had the 70s, and then the zeros had the 80s, but now we're stuck very much in the 80s.
Yeah, we have
Although
not left. Yeah.
the 90s has stuck around. My oldest son Connor talks about like the 80s music is just so popular because in a way it's so effusive. There's like so much fun stuff in the 80s
Hmm.
that also doesn't suck in terms
Yeah.
of of music. But um yeah, that pop cycle is a real thing. If you look at it, the 70s loved the 50s because you had Grease and other things like that going on in the 70s. So
Yeah. Well, that's a good. Let's spin this over to the music real quick before we get into our list and stuff to talk about the 80s. That's perfect spot there because yeah, the 80s is the 80s. You know it all. I mean, it's hair metal, pop, stuff. Like I have these like Huey Lewis and the News. Love them. They were like flash in the pan of the 80s for sure. Um 1990 called and they, this still around, but their moment was then. I also don't think people, when I did summer of 82 at 40
uh-huh.
long ago, you were part of that. One of the most fascinating things when I was doing the songs to pick and going through a particular artist was seeing just how fucking gigantic this person was. I knew they were big, but I didn't realize they were top of the fucking world big. John Mellencamp.
Yeah, Mellencamp.
His sales are like, who's Bruce Springsteen? Like you could have really, he really had leverage on him for most of that decade.
Yeah, the first half for sure. It's when Born in the USA comes out that is the change up. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that they are, if not friends, then
They
respect
did a song
colleagues.
together the last couple of years.
Yeah,
So,
Mellencamp played Born in the USA at his Kennedy, at Springsteen's Kennedy Center honors.
hmm.
So they have they definitely have a connection. But yeah, it's Mellencamp was also, and continuously changing his name through the decade.
Johnny Cougar, John Cougar, John Cougar Mellencamp, John Mellencamp.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
And it's interesting, but he is doing very consistent work. He's on my I can't remember how many top 40 hits. I did an article at the Post on
Hmm.
who actually was the voice of the 80s and who had the most top 40 hits specifically. And
Hmm.
Mellencamp's high on the list. Number one turns out to be Phil Collins
Yep.
between
He's big here in the 80s. Yeah. Genesis and solo career.
but yeah, it's worth mentioning Mellencamp. And he starts off pretty big in the early 90s with Get a Leg Up, Wild Night. He's pretty consistent. He
Hmm.
starts to like lay back later in the 90s. I don't think that he like necessarily falls off so much as he kind of slows down a little bit
Hmm.
because he's still a concert draw. He still goes out
Yeah.
there when it feels like it.
Yeah. We have the pop startlet competition, which everybody knows Madonna, but yeah, there was also Cyndi Lauper, Debbie Gibson, and Tiffany aiming at that same goal, though Madonna went the most adult first and stayed around.
Debbie Gibson has the distinction of being the youngest person to write, perform, and produce a hit single
Okay.
because she did all three. She wrote and performed, and this was a Only in My Dreams was the first one, but she did it repeatedly. She was
Mm-hmm.
the writer and artist and produced her own shit, which is crazy
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And not to knock Tiffany, but Tiffany was more had a machine behind her.
Yeah.
And W. Gibson was more like, I'm writing songs in my bedroom.
Yep.
And I've got my keyboard, I'm knocking this stuff out, and came up as like these
Ca
fully pop songs.
Cameoed on the first season of 90210. Um, I've been watching that show recently, and yeah, I was like, oh, Debbie Gibson.
Yeah.
Um,
Three of Tiffany's first or two of her first three hits were covers. So
yes, yep.
there's a
Um,
difference.
yeah, I have hair metal bands that aren't talked about today, but were big then, like Nelson, Warrant, Cinderella, Scorpions, Firehouse, Bigs Are Big, Great White, White Lion, Tesla, LA Guns, Dokken. Yes, in your circles and history, you know those, but I'm talking if I went to a kid today, it'd be like, you remember Nelson?
I'm
They
going to mention
they will
Nelson
say
was on.
Peacemaker.
He's,
He was on Peacemaker, which I was like, holy shit, Nelson.
that
But
that reveal is
before
tremendous.
that,
That reveal is tremendous. But that I
yeah,
was who wait, can you go back to the top of the list because there's someone Scorpions.
Scorpions, yeah,
The Scorpions is a band that I will always take up for.
well respected band, yeah.
And also
If you know,
because
you know, yeah.
every video, Rudolph Schinker looks like he's having the best fucking time
Oh
on earth.
yeah,
That dude smiles continuously through every
yes,
video. It's hilarious. It doesn't matter how dark or whatever the song might be or whatever you're singing about. Rudy Schinker is enjoying the hell out of being a Scorpion.
yes. Real quick, so we can get to our list here, though. So I have Van Halen and Journey are larger than life that I don't think people could believe now. Maybe Journey they would, but Van Halen was like the band for a lot. Yeah,
These kids today, now they Van Halen is hard to conceptualize because they probably grew up only under the specter of Van Halen fighting.
yeah,
And the
and
thing was, it was massive worldwide news when Roth left and Sammy came in.
yep.
It was on regular nightly news. It wasn't just
Hmm.
MTV. It made regular news. And people,
And when Roth came back, it made big news. Yeah.
yeah, it was literally covered in actual news that
Hmm.
Van Halen had replaced David Lee Roth with established star Sammy Hagar because
Yep.
Sammy Hagar had just had I Can't Drive 55 and Two Kinds of Love the
Hmm.
previous year before joining Van Halen. He was of the moment on the charts too as
Yeah.
a solo artist after fronting Montrose. Um, so yeah, I mean it was big news. It
Yeah.
was pop culture news. It was news.
Yeah. And then I have the underground proto alternative movement with REM, Pixies, Nine Inch Nails, The Cure, Depeche Mode, Sonic Youth, Psychedelic Furs, and the Smiths. Um,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
then yeah,
no, the college rock they used to call it. It was the college rock charts because college radio stations were the ones who were breaking a lot of these acts in America.
yeah,
And then K Rock and other, you had K Rock in LA and other stations in New York who were picking up these groups at the college rock chart. But if you open Rolling Stone in the day
right,
back, they had the charts, and it would be like the top 10 college albums, or that you could see who was on these charts, like the Cure, Psychedelic Furs, etc. And so, like you mentioned, the Smiths and stuff, they start building this following from not just music videos and radio play in selected places, but because the college stations were playing them, and because there was there were magazines that were devoted to subculture stuff.
hmm
And a lot of the magazines that were out there, like Maximum Rock and Roll for punk stuff and really hardcore stuff, but other magazines were covering Depeche Mode and bands that you wouldn't necessarily get like in rotation on your local station.
yeah,
You weren't like they would have their breakthrough hit. Like I don't know that the Smiths ever had a breakthrough radio hit. Um, we could talk about How Soon Is Now and songs that were in movies and shit, but like Just Like Heaven was a top 40 hit for The Cure in 1987.
hmm
Depeche Mode had People Are People in like 1984, 1985. These other bands, you can kind of articulate it. The Smiths were truly the most underground. New Order had True Faith on the top 40.
Right.
But I cannot think of the top of my head if the Smiths had a legit top 40 hit in the States. So that was like purely a subculture band.
Yeah, you had to be reading the magazines to go pick up Um, but yeah, they also I have the well-known Wham, George Michael, Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, Springsteen, Tina Turner, The Police, Guns N' Roses, Billy Joel, Bryan Adams, Bon Jovi, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, U2, Phil Collins, Duran. Did I say Prince? If I did, he gets a second mention.
Prince twice.
Um,
That's fine.
yes. So yeah. So now, if we want to move on to our what do we think? What of the things we talked about above and the before this? What are the programs that got this right? I'm gonna. I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up the one that I think maybe has a shot at being the top one. Freaks and Geeks
Oh, damn.
TV show.
Nice. And
That
sticks.
huh?
They have a pervasive use of
Stick.
sticks.
Yeah. I when I saw this show, like I felt like I was at home. I first watched it when I was in Los Angeles, and they got living in it takes place in Michigan. They got living in the Midwest like during the 80s so right, and the vibes of the kids crazily realistic. Like there's the part where when she goes to school, Linda Cardellini goes to school, and like Jason Siegel's like upset with him. He's like, "What?" She's like, oh, "It's like John Bonham died." Oh, and it's like, yeah, that's how kids act. Like back when I was growing, even in the '90s, that was still kind of a prevalent way to act. And then just like the weird, like Joel Hodgson's got a weird character that feels oddly specific to small town stuff
Yeah.
in it. That's realistic. I just the it just like they get the not all like the kids live in the Midwest, but like there's middle class families. There's not like they get it all so right and the attitudes, and they don't flash the styles. It takes place in the early '80s, so it's not
Uh,
going crazy. And disco's still around. They're not ignoring that. And just
Lindsay wears her dad's army jacket a lot,
yes, that is yeah,
which was a thing.
yeah,
And what's also I mentioned sticks because they figure prominently in a couple of parts. There's the scene when the bullies are coming to beat him up, and it's playing Renegade,
yes,
but also the kind of famous scene with Jason Segel sings "Lady,"
right,
but that's also very accurate and of the moment in terms of the music that they're using. But the series, because of its cancellation, ends with Lindsay leaving to follow the dead, which was
yeah,
definitely a late 70s into 80s thing
yeah,
that, you know, I interesting because she also has the scene where she's like really listening to the Grateful Dead for the first time in her bedroom and dancing, and which I would also suggest is period accurate.
yeah. I want them to never pick this show up again for a reunion episode or movie or something. Like I want it to leave it like this because I think the ending is perfect, even though it's open ended.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Um, yeah, and James Franco's character is so wildly accurate too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. What do you have? One that you want to throw in the ring here?
Well, I think it's hard to say. I really kind of struggle with it with the ones that are accurate because there are things that like that capture the attitude of it, like Wet Hot American Summer really captures
Mm-hmm.
the attitude, but again, it's a
That yeah,
approach, but it's an over the top kind of comedy.
gotcha.
Um, but
I had that down as an option.
yeah, and I feel like that there's definitely um, I'm more overwhelmed by the ones who aim and miss, like the wedding singer and
Yeah,
stuff. It's very hard for me to um, articulate who gets it right. That's why I lean more heavily on the stuff of the time that's more emblematic of it because even Wedding Singer's in the middle of the 90s. It's not even that
Right.
far away and still manages to be like, what? But
Um,
oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, weirdly enough, I think that this is actually a 70s, but bridges into the 80s. I think Zodiac is
Yeah.
a really interesting one in terms of establishing tone and so forth, and getting times right, because it's moving. It's a moving target
Mm-hmm.
of years as the case is going on and everything. It's not precisely 80s, but in terms of like you're actually seeing the effort and the reflection of like this time is progressing and stuff is changing as it progresses.
Mm-hmm.
But you also get um I find a lot of shows that are dating themselves as they actually happened in the 80s, but snapshotting stuff pretty effectively.
Yeah.
Because we have people using computers that we haven't it's quite gotten to the computers are magic
Mm-hmm.
part. Like there's some shows where computers are magic, but like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, we have one scene that revolves around a computer, and that's him changing his number of absences.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, but the idea of, you know, him being able to access the school computer from home is almost like magic, but maybe he could have done it with a dial-up
Yeah.
if he knew what he was doing,
Right.
but it's kind of funny. So like even in the middle of the 80s, we're already kind of like, let's just hand wave it. How this shit works. But
Um, okay. I have so one of mine, which I think is pivotal. It's the movie that did it and did it best before everybody else started running away with it, and never winks and feels wildly accurate. It's Ty West's House of the Devil.
oh,
That movie,
damn.
I swear you could show a kid who didn't know, well, if they didn't recognize Greta Gerwig, you could show it to them and they would think they watched an 80s movie. Like, I think it's that well done from
Yeah.
start to finish that it looks like this lost 80s movie no one found out about and
Yeah,
deals
the
with
film
satanic
stock.
panic. Yeah.
The film stock of that. So like that made me think of Totally Killer.
Yeah.
Which have you watched Totally
Mm-hmm.
Killer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's got some like exaggerated bits about the 80s stuff, but
Yeah.
it really does nail things like everything revolves around this party or everything revolves around this fair being in town.
Yes.
That it's kind of it's very evocative of like what small town stuff was like, and like um you see a lot of one accurate thing that you see in the movies that reflect the 80s is when they have an 80s movie where there's an absolute rager of a party going on.
Right.
Because that stuff didn't used to necessarily devolve into gunfights and everybody being arrested. It was more like, oh shit, it's the cops. Everybody drops their cups and scatters.
Yes.
Which in Totally Killer is really they do that perfectly because the cops are like, we're going inside, everybody stay right here. And the cops come out and everybody's gone. Like I laugh so hard at that because it was that's they nailed that. They nailed that
Yes.
aesthetic of the party thing. But
Um, okay. My next, Netflix's best 1980 set show, Glow. I think that one is so focused on the event of it, the people, and it does add like historical things happen in the real life, but it's not like it happens as it would a regular person that it happened to. I think they do the Challenger explosion happens in Glow, but they do it in an accurate way. But I think it's not all flat. It does go. It has L.A. in it, and it goes to Vegas. But like, I think it really captures a lived-in feel for the 1980s.
yeah, also another one that I thought of was Maxine,
Yep, I had that
with
down on
Ty
here.
West.
Yep, it
But
totally. I think it. I think it's the best version of the heightened version is Maxine. I would think.
yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned House of the Devil. Ty West is obviously into
Yeah.
some of the same shit we are, but it's got the satanic panic angle
Yeah.
in it, and but also the dirtiness of parts of Los Angeles at that
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And the way that the porn industry and so forth, they really like nail cultural aspects of that, and the
Hmm.
clothing is pretty accurate too.
Right.
Because like as we often say, like not everybody was wearing like parachute pants and shit. Nobody was wearing Michael Jackson's jacket. You know, it was
Right.
there were a whole lot of gradients on that fashion.
And it was like, what wasn't DeBarge wearing that jacket before Michael Jackson, or did they? It would just happen at the same time.
They were pretty close, but I mean, you know, well, Janet was married to one of the DeBarge siblings, if I'm not mistaken, at one point,
Gotcha.
at least in a close relationship. You have to go back and look. Well, Janet definitely had a marriage that was annulled.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because like yeah, um, James DeBarge married uh pop singer Janet Jackson in 1984, and it was annulled. Never happened.
See, there you go. I
There
was
you go.
right. But
Uh,
Michael would have
yeah.
been wearing that jacket. What? Because he's not.
That's the
People think
Thriller
he
jacket.
is.
He was wearing it and Beat It. That's the first
Yeah.
appearance of the jacket.
So it's before that. So that's 83 still, because
Okay.
Thriller doesn't become a top 40 hit till 84. That album cycle ran like 2.5 years for it
Gotcha.
to,
Yeah. Okay.
it was in
DeBar.
82 at
Okay.
least.
He was wearing it in '85. So yeah, they had it first. DeBar or Michael had it first, and
Yeah.
DeBarge wore it because I think they wore it in the Rhythm of the Night video, if I'm not
Oh yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
Um, but okay. Next one I have also. So this is a combo, both Fargo the movie and Fargo season two on FX, because Fargo the movie is just that is like some minute like there is no embellishment of the 80s on Fargo. It is boring. It's not all wood panel shit either. Like
No.
they have a I mean the local businesses look very accurate. The vibe, the feel, like they aren't saying 90s lingo in a 80s movie. Um yeah, and the season 2 of Fargo has one of my favorite moments in television history. When Patrick Wilson runs into Ronald Reagan as played by Bruce Campbell, and he's talking about his wife having cancer, and he doesn't know what to do about it. And Ronald Reagan says, "Well, if you ask me, I believe an American can overcome anything." And he's like, "Okay, but how?" And Ronald Reagan just goes, puts his hand on his shoulder and walks off. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's one, the Republican Party in a nutshell, and two, just it's the most I have always loved Bruce Campbell. That might be my favorite moment from him as an actor of all this thing. Just it's a scene that has stuck with me so long since that aired. I think about that scene a lot.
Well,
But
going back to the movie a second on the 80s-ness, when
mm-hmm,
Marge interviews the two girls that were with Storm Aaron Buscemi
mm-hmm.
at the bar, and their hair
Oh,
is hilariously Midwest. That the big
yes.
hair with the thing, whatever the fuck that
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
But that if you know, you know this thing right here. In addition to the big hair,
Right.
that I mean, that is a hilariously on point moment
And those
because
and those 80s haircuts in places in the Midwest were like still around as far as like the mid 2000s. Like when I went to Ball State and you go to like Muncie Towny places and stuff, those haircuts were still prominent.
yeah, in the early 90s, grunge era, there was a big shift of girls who were like more into the alternative stuff and or the 70s quoting of the down the middle part straight hair
Mm-hmm.
became real prominent.
Yep.
And this is Are You Gonna Go My Way by Lenny Kravitz. That video, if you
Mm-hmm.
check that out, there are a ton of girls with that. There are girls with um, like afros and stuff that are like mimicking the 70s style, but that part down the middle, Ally McGraw and Love Story, like straight hair, blew
Yes.
up early 90s like as a rejection of the big hair stuff. Like that's metal, that's preppy, that's whatever, that
Mm-hmm.
stuff got shoved away real fast. And there was a cultural break where, dare I say it, like sorority girl and non-sorority girl because that big hair was still hanging around for a while in the Greek system. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay. Another one, and this covers 70s and 80s, but I think it when it gets to the 80s, it gets some very oddly specific things incredibly genuine and right, and that's Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Like the recording studio stuff,
Uh-huh.
the shitty trying to make movie stuff, and the one thing that felt very 80s and natural is when Burt Reynolds and Heather Graham are trying to do the stuff in the limo, the
Yes.
car, with the way the microphone, just the way the microphone sounds that he's speaking into and the video, the way it's shot. I'm like, yeah, I know what this is. I can,
Yeah. And using the video tape camera as opposed to the film camera, which
mm-hmm.
has made a big distinction of the way that porn was shot.
Yeah,
Like we used to do this on film and everything's on like shitty VHS.
right.
You know, that
Yeah,
they are feeling their own cheapness in a
yeah,
way. It's I mean it's really on point. And it's really sad in a lot of
yeah.
ways, the way
Oh,
that
yeah.
they communicate that. But also the absolutely hilarious choice to have Mark Wahlberg cover the song from Transformers the movie.
You got the touch.
Yep.
Yep, which I have mentioned my circle of life of that song. This is where it gets passed. And then Mark Wahlberg goes to star in Transformers, and then the next Transformers after he leaves has the touch in it. But it's a movie that embraces the fads and stuff without like downright exploiting them, and it
Yeah.
does it in a way where it's like this is what people who are in LA that don't have the money the big stars do, but want to try to be like and look like them do. That's really specific and odd way to frame that, but that's what they're doing here. Like,
Yeah. One of my
it,
favorite single shots of the movie is when they cut to Don Cheadle and he's dressed like Rick James and so happy about it,
oh yeah,
like the hair and everything. Because I always quote the Guzman "Wear what you dig"
yep.
bit, but like when they cut to he's got the Rick James braids, he's just so sad.
And Cheadle's so good in that movie. I think he's
Oh,
he might be overlooked. But that yeah,
good
that
actor.
movie's that is a start to finish perfect film for me. Like that movie just rocks, and it's coming to 4K in December. Very excited. Um, do you have other ones you want to throw in?
I
I'll
can't
just
think of any
I'll
that
throw
are
these in the ring.
on.
American Psycho very much hits the Wall Street. I mean, this is 80s by way of Wall Street, but it feels like it's also a condemnation even more so on Wall Street than
Yeah, the book came out in my senior year of high school, I think,
mhm.
because I remember my high school English teacher who would sometimes veer from very cool to very weird, was talking about the controversy of it without having read it. And
Oh.
she's like, who would read that? Who would read something like that? I'm like, I put my hand up. I'm like, I'd want to see what it actually is, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I did go out and get it and I read it and I'm like, oh well this guy's fucking around.
Right.
Like he's trying to be as extreme as possible. And it's like I didn't quite get all the satirical points at like 16
Mm-hmm.
that they were after him. Like I started to understand that more later, but I'm like, oh, this shit is repulsive because he's making a point that this guy is repulsive, but I was not engaging on every level.
Yeah.
The movie engages a lot more on that, and is like, as I got older, I understood more of what's happening. But the very idea of that Wall Street bro excess shit and the business card being so important and
Yeah.
the use of Huey Lewis and Whitney Houston and so forth throughout the book and then the movie is
You own a Whitney Houston album? Oh yeah.
and it does open American Psycho the film does open with the New Order song in the
Mm-hmm.
club. So
Yeah. It's a very interesting one. Okay, I have another TV show, but I think this is perfection here is The Americans, the spy
God,
show, because you got the Russian scare, Cold War stuff, and just I think aesthetically it's on point, and doesn't go over the top with styles or anything. Um, Talks about stuff that maybe we don't have in the limelight too much in terms of like people's experience working for government agencies and stuff such.
Yeah, and I think that one thing, this is like a slightly different note, but I think that one thing that very few will touch on it, but a lot of projects set in the 80s now don't acknowledge the pervasive feeling of impending nuclear apocalypse.
Right.
Because they really had us on that train when we were, Day After comes out when I'm like 10. And there was
That
also,
was a big deal too that people don't no one talks about
yeah,
today.
and the week of my birthday, the Soviet Union shot down a Korean jetliner full of civilians because they set it straight into the wrong airspace. And like we legit thought for a couple days that we were going to war.
Is that anything like bombing or Venezuelan boats?
No, this was like legit missile shot an entire
Oh, jeez.
passenger plane of, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
like, but it was crazy. And then like the day
Mm.
after and everything, and there was legit, feelings of apocalypse. There were songs about it, like 99 Left Balloons, for example, is about it,
Right?
and a lot of people don't realize that, but it's like that there is the vibe of, yeah, we're all going to die in a nuclear war pretty soon. And a lot of that, like Night of the Comet, and there's a lot of movies that vibe on apocalypse because it
Hmm.
was in the air. Day of the Dead comes back.
Yeah.
There's definitely a surge in zombie movies and everything, and all this stuff that usually ties in with those cultural waves. I don't know too many things that have been about the 80s that have really kind of locked down that whole.
Hmm.
Um, there are definitely a few years where we're like, oh, we're all fucked. The nuclear war is going to kill all of us. Okay, we might be okay from nuclear war, but AIDS is going to kill all of us. Okay, we might be okay with that, but acid rain is going to kill.
Right.
There's something every few months that was like we were all going to die, and I do think that totally affects. Oh, drugs! Drugs are going to kill us all throughout the whole decade. But that does increase kind of the fatalism of Gen X, I think, of like all this shit's going to kill us.
Your next door neighbor is a Satan worshiper. They're gonna kill you
Oh
as soon as
yeah,
they see you.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, we wouldn't worry about that because we were on the other side. But
Um. All right. Here's another one. SLC Punk. This
yeah,
really
that
gets
that's
the I want to be these bigger cities and I live in this small town and I'm really whack because there's people struggle to find community, kind of thing, or trying to emulate what they think a community is in a bigger city and a smaller one.
yeah. There's a great line in that when he's arguing with his dad and he tells his dad he sold out, and dad says, "I didn't sell out, I bought in," which is uh perfect.
Yeah. And SLC's like it kind of reminds me too like there's the did you ever see this movie came out like the late 90s or early 2000 called White Boys?
I can't say that I have.
Really interesting movie about these guys who live in this small town and they are uh all into the gangster rap hip hop culture thing and they think that they go to a real big city and go to fit and just find out how like it's shell shock from them because they have like fantasized and idolized this idea that they think they just would like go there and fit in and they do not. It's real not a good movie, but I've always thought about like, yeah, it's a bold kind of topic to cover, but
Uh-huh.
trying to appropriate a culture and then jumping right into it.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so that was so SLC Punk. Everybody Wants Some, Richard Linklater. Granted, it takes place in 1980, but in Texas, which I'm not familiar with
I
growing
have
up in Texas.
regrettably not seen it, but
Ah, it's yeah, get some very at that time like campus college area stuff, pretty good attitudes. It got a lot of knocks when it came out for being so misogynistic. I'm like, what do you think a college baseball team in the 1980s was going to behave like?
yeah, I
Kids today will note a younger Glenn Powell jumping off the page here. Um, But yeah,
I think that's something too that might need.
it's like it was the point of the movie, not an endorsement. Like that was what the story was. It's just
Yeah.
film Twitter
Well,
bitching that just gets on my nerves.
cultural context is important. One of the things I've noticed about, you know, definitely our language and perceptions change about stuff, but the Monster Squad,
Oh
I
yeah.
how many mentions of the other F word are in
Yep.
Monster,
Oh yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah.
and holy shit, like that's something that I took away from as a young person, but definitely notice now.
Yeah, one of my favorite high school movies, Can't Hardly Wait,
Oh,
drops that too as a joke part. Like there's a quiet part and someone just yells out that three-letter F word and everybody's like, "Ha!" And everybody's like, "Somebody called me." Yeah. And I'm like,
yeah,
and I try to tell people, I'm like, yeah, we use that thing like it was nothing else. In the being a Midwest kid, and then I'm not acting above, like I didn't use that word, but I didn't understand the harm, or I didn't, I was ignorant or whatever to it. It was just another word like "what up, fool," or like something like that. Back then, but we weren't right for using it then. We were just brought up in area, and our environments were unhealthy that we were
yeah.
brought in.
It was incredibly pervasive, and then it's almost funny how quickly it just dropped
Yeah.
because it did drop hard from cultural use.
Yeah. Well, so did the R word, and that
Yeah,
people use that now, like, haha, we broke it free. I'm like, and you sound like assholes.
right.
Yeah. So I imagine that's a word they'll try to break out of hibernation. Um,
Yeah,
but the
someone will call
The
it a
British
pork
use it every day if they smoke. So yeah, going through, yeah, I also have the last two Conjuring movies, The Devil Made Me Do It and Last Rites. They don't relish, they don't relish in like, oh, fashion and all this stuff. It's very period accurate costuming and housing that I think work for it.
Yeah, Lorraine's frilly neck stuff, that's like pseudo Victorian weird shit. That had
Hmm.
a moment in the 80s that really gets,
Hmm.
played up in the stuff that Lorraine's wearing.
Very church lady stuff that's on there. No Country for Old Men. Very much not distracted by um the times. I
Yeah.
have one. I have one on here where I did not grow up in Italy, but Call Me by Your Name feels like it captures to me the essence of going away for something in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why, but it just it feels like a an accurate 80s vacation. Not that we all hooked up with Army Hammer when we went on our little, if we went on like, went away for a weekend or something like that to somewhere different. But it just, I don't know. There's a vibe of that movie that I feel, and the dialogue I think in that movie feels very accurate to period. Rather, it doesn't really inject modern sensibilities into the dialogue either.
This is kind of a weird one, but it's an 80s movie set in the 60s that still manages to be 80s,
Okay.
which is Dirty Dancing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah. Because the music. Yeah.
they use 60s songs, but then they have new songs
Mm-hmm.
written for it that don't feel totally alien. But
Yeah.
many of the concerns in the movie are also concerns of the time. Like people forget how big of a role abortion plays in Dirty Dancing.
Oh yeah. It's the movie. Yeah.
And that's a very much a very hotbed topic of the 80s as this is going on. And of course the screenwriters often talked about her fight with the studio that like, no, I can't, I'm not kicking that out. This is the story. This is,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely she's talked about semi-autobiographical and stuff, but it manages to be a movie set in the past that echoes the current cultural tides while also using a blend of 60s music and 80s music so that it's a weird hybrid that there's not a lot of movies that pull this thing off
Mm-hmm.
in the same way, and so it's weird. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's because it's
I
like
do. Yeah.
it doesn't quite feel like anything else, and even stuff that like some characters say like, um I feel like family vacations are going away. They're going to stop coming to resorts like this.
Mm-hmm.
And people miss also that Dirty Dancing is a very Jewish film
Yeah.
because these Catskill resorts and so forth were very Jewish. They were safe places for Jewish families to vacation together and so. If you look up the history of Catskills resorts and what that actually means, and the comedians like Henny Youngman's even in it, and like what that's all about, and then understand, they're going there for this reason, for this community, etc. And then this other stuff happens on top of it. And it's not like a huge emphasis point in the movie, but it's also, something that deserves to be mentioned because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's implicit. But, you know, so not a lot of people weren't talking about that either.
Right. Right.
Outside of like Yentl, who were very expressly, about Judaism and after a fashion. It's something that like I said, it manages to be a whole lot of things. It's a weird duck.
I also got two movies from the 2000s here. Before we wrap up, just a couple more. Donnie Darko
Oh,
and
hell yeah.
Adventureland. Both Adventureland a very specific aspect, the carny aspect of that 80s, and Donnie Darko it it's all about like it's a movie that punches you in the face with being like we're in the 80s but doesn't at the same time. Like it's very very interesting.
Yeah, and it also features the Swayze.
The
Um,
Swayze, and it features the woman that even though he's like convicted of child pornography still believes after and fights for his cause.
well, this is the problem I've always had with Donnie Darko, is that at the end of the movie, right?
Hmm.
So we are to understand that everything has happened and Donnie has died and so forth.
Yeah.
It would have happened before Swayze was exposed.
Yeah.
So he's still out there being
Yeah.
guy.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The child molester pornographer gets away with it, which is a very weird fucking thread to leave
Right.
hanging.
That's true. That is true. That's funny.
To close the loop. He's like, I'm going to close the loop to save the world. Child molester gets away, but the world is saved.
The world is saved.
And it's like when I realized that, like I think I realized really like sunk in the second time I saw it. I was like, oh fuck, what a weird loop
Yeah.
to not close within respect to that.
Um, I never thought that's good.
It's all you're gonna think about.
Right. Uh, so the last one I have here for serious consideration is a Best Picture winner, Argo. That one I think does it
Yeah,
right
and
with
and I think that it's you know, Argo is really super interesting, and I've always been like the most interested, quite frankly, not just in the whole fact that it happened,
hmm.
but that Jack Kirby
Yeah, yeah.
played a role in the actual uh,
Right.
plan of making those designs and everything. I'm like, I love that because um, there are a lot of stories about Jack Kirby telling stories about killing Nazis.
Hmm.
It's like when Stan and Jack were in World War II, Stan worked in the Signal Corps. He worked for the paper, and
Hmm.
he was a journalist in World War II. But Jack was killing Nazis.
Yeah.
And Stan Sakai, who created Usagi Yojimbo, tells a great story about Jack Kirby. Where he said, I love talking about to Jack about World War II stories because they usually end up with him killing four Nazis with a knife. And famously, Jack, the guys from the American Nazi Party came to the timely offices to complain about Captain America and like the way that he was punching Hitler on the cover. And Kirby's like, "Tell him I'll be right down."
uh,
He's gonna go fight him.
Perfect.
But the fact that like of all the guys in the world, you're going to recruit for a secret mission to save people's lives in a totalitarian regime. Kirby is your artist.
Yes.
It's just the best. Like who
Uh,
else would it be? It's got to be Jack Kirby.
right. Um, that's that's good. And also Argo also embraces this thing where it was kind of to me creepy, but like you had the old version of like 1950s adults where they're still wearing versions of like their like like the glasses and stuff the thick horn rims, which weren't stylish then,
Yeah.
in the 80s. And just kind of like, oh, they're still in their time or whatever, and they just clashed so much with the normal pop culture or even the boring aesthetic of the 80s. I do,
That is,
yeah,
I was gonna say, steering it back to Stranger Things on that
yeah.
comment for a minute. I've always appreciated how uncool Mike Wheeler's dad has made them
Oh
look,
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yes.
because that dude sucks.
He
But
does suck. I want to give before we head out. I want to give was Back to the Future 3 one of the first 80s period pieces because it came out in 90 and had to go back to 85 at the
ooh,
end.
it
So
might have been.
that was intentionally made to be an 80s period piece, not shot in 89 and then it takes place in 89, but it came out in 90.
Right.
But that one intentionally went back to 85 in particular moments. So, also props. This is an odd one. I guess maybe Wonder Woman 84 because my main criticism about that movie when it came out was that it didn't embrace the 80s enough, but it toned it for a pop movie of that stature and taking place in 84 and having it in the title, it really didn't relish in all the 80s-ness. So I guess it toned it down.
Yeah. My main complaint about that is the non-consensual sex.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
I,
that. People
well, that's I don't know if I guess I coined it because this is what I called it and I hadn't heard. I said Wonder Woman 84 fails the Vinkman test
the
because in Ghostbusters, Vinkman declines to have sex with a possessed Sigourney Weaver.
Oh yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
Wonder Woman 84, Steve Trevor is in that guy's body, and they show us him as Steve Trevor, but
Yeah,
it's not. Steve's in that guy's body. So
right.
she has sex with the body that's inhabited by Steve Trevor, and then gaslights the guy later when he sees her after not being possessed anymore. And he's like, "Do I know you?" And she kind of like walks off, and I'm like, "Damn, that makes
Yeah.
Wonder Woman really shitty."
That I mean, the thing is like, yeah, it is. It's body swap, whatever. But it's like they didn't have to write it that way. They could have just brought Steve Trevor back, and he's like, I don't know
Yes,
why I'm here.
that is my primary complaint about it because
Yeah,
it's so
because it's
fucked
not
up.
based off any comic thing, right? That
No,
bringing
it's
him
not.
no,
It's just
like
so weird.
it's weird. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah, it was a point of contention on the internet for quite some time.
well, yeah, that was my immediate there are a lot of problems with that movie, but my immediate disdain with that. But also the whole idea that in the later movies, it's a secret that Wonder Woman exists, but she's like coming into a mall and saving people in 1984. But then when she shows up later, everybody's like, "Who's that?"
True.
I thought she was with you.
Oh, Wonder Woman 84. Okay, well, hey, I think that's a pretty definitive list there. We didn't order them like we promised or anything like that, but you heard plenty of things like Freaks and Geeks, House of the Devil, Glow, Fargo the movie and season 2, Boogie Nights, Zodiac, Totally Killer, Maxine, Dirty Dancing, American Psycho, The Americans, SLC Punk, Everybody Wants Some, Conjuring 3 and 4, No Country for Old Men, Donnie Darko, Adventureland, Argo. So put them in your own order. Send them to me. How's that? There you go.
Yeah.
But I think we kind of got the gist of what has done them right and why they did them right.
And you also heard about 80 shows that you can check out in various streaming platforms that are actually reflective of the decade as opposed
Yes, yes. Very true. Yeah, we talked about the 80s and we talked about looking like trying to be the 80s. So,
yeah.
very very cool. Which yeah, one thing I like another Freaks and Geeks things real quick is the moment where Martin Starr is all about watching Dallas because that's what the adults watch. You know, that's
Yeah.
the cool. And so he wants to get a step ahead.
And
Like,
also when he's watching, is it David Brennan, the stand-up, where he's really
mm-hmm.
just enjoy this. He's by himself and he's
Yeah.
really enjoying the stand-up and laughing really hard. Like that's his outlet.
Well, that and he has an argument with feels real with Thomas F. Wilson, who's just like dating his mom,
Yeah.
and he likes Bill Murray, and Thomas F. Wilson, oh, he's a smartass, and it just shows there's that disconnect between and I love that's so genuine and honest.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of writers might have found that as a in together for them. Like, oh, everybody loves Bill Murray. They weren't, the Saturday Night Live guys to a generation were a thing, but there was an older generation thinking, they aren't funny. They aren't, like when I was coming up, like adults were repulsed by like Adam Sandler and Chris Farley. And Adam Sandler is one of the biggest comedy stars ever to walk the earth. So yeah, it's just to point out how good Freaks and Geeks is. That's just, yeah, I think. All right, so there you have it. Troy, I appreciate you coming aboard for this. Where can more people keep up with you in this time?
Well, SaturdayEveningPost.com is where you'll find a lot of my regular work, and I write a lot about pop culture and stuff, but also Marvel Comics for Dummies is in stores now, and X-Men for Dummies comes out December 16th.
All right, just in time for the holidays. I'm on the socials at Brandon4KUHD. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can watch all these as well as my physical media reviews, in which I have some new clients. Very excited to review their titles coming very soon. The book Fantastic, a celebration of fans discovering Doctor Who, which I am featured in, is available online and in stores now from Zeppo Publishing. And this Friday and Saturday, I just got to confirm, so that's why I haven't been pushing it here. In Indianapolis, Indiana, I'll be at Days of the Dead for their holiday edition of the convention. I don't know what's going to change about it, but we'll see the holiday cheer. Friday, I'll be testing out a brand new live show game that you'll want to check out, in which you can win a pass to Days of the Dead Indy in 2026, as well as PopCon 2026 and maybe some other conventions. Saturday, Chris Johnson joins me for Poorly Described Movies, the game. So check out Days of the Dead website for more info. Next week, I don't know for sure what the episode will be. I do, but it's not in ink yet, or the ink hasn't dried. But come back to the Brandon Peters Show. As always, stay film positive.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.